Thank you, Ewen. This morning we will have our first of a four-part discussion on the HolyCow Congregational Assessment. You may recall that the HolyCow is an organization that organized the survey that we took through our membership last August. Our session asked a small group of church leaders to help present this information to the congregation. That group did present a two-page summary of the HolyCow report, which was included in your December church newsletter. And now we will invite you all to participate in Zoom discussions of the report beginning this morning and then for the next 3 Sundays after worship during our virtual parlor time. All 4 of these discussions will be recorded and then posted to a new section of our website in the near future. So I'll provide a small amount of background on the HolyCow process before inviting Ruth Ascher to present the first section of the discussion series and to answer any questions you might have. At the recommendation of the Presbyterian of Northern Kansas, our session engaged HolyCow Consulting last summer after Pastor Charlie accepted a new call. HolyCow has worked with more than 3,000 churches around the country. The assessment tool was designed to give us a clear picture of who we are as a church and what directions are most important for the future. The assessment took place in August, and in September and October, our session, along with a representative of the deacons and trustees, met with Emily Swanson of HolyCow to go over the results. Emily did so, providing comparisons to other churches that HolyCow has worked with, both before as well as during the COVID-19 pandemic, giving us good benchmarks to better understand ourselves. And now I'll turn it over to Ruth.
The section I'm going to cover is who we are. And before I start, I'm excited to say that on the church website, there is under the main options, one called Planning for the Future. And in that, it's broken down into the different sections so that the narrative of the report that you were sent is now on the web page. And as Keith said, videos of these presentations will also be linked to that. The who we are is that kind of about who took part in that. We had a very high rate of completion, 99% of the average Sunday attendance. That it was specifically 97 persons. And the consultant said this is a very high response rate. Just of note, 70% of the respondents have been involved with First Presbyterian Church for 20 or more years. And 74% of the responders were over the age of 65. However, the consultant indicated that age is less of a factor than the tenure, that we all have long roots with this congregation. One thing to note, which I took quite a bit of time to try to understand and to kind of wrap my thinking around, was there are characteristics of churches that are surveyed, and about 15% of the churches surveyed, the congregations will focus on the clergy person to reflect how they feel about the church overall. And we are one of those 15%. This doesn't mean that the pastor runs things, and it doesn't tell us anything about strengths or weaknesses of the church, but it does mean that we have a tendency to rely on our pastor a bit more for strategic leadership, and our satisfaction with the church sometimes relies on our experience with the pastor. In other words, do I like the pastor and things? So this is some of the things that we need to keep in mind as we go forward with our strategic planning and setting of goals and things. There are some advantages of having a church that is clergy focused. Positive changes can happen very quickly that way. If a new pastor comes on board and they click with the congregation, the mood of the congregation can change just almost instantly on that. And some pastors function very, very well in a clergy-focused system. These tend to be people who enjoy the center stage and have goodwill and have lots of resources in their ministry and mission. However, there's a downside to that, and clergy-focused churches can be anxious systems because we're relying on our success or failure with the pastor. So a lot is riding upon that relationship. There's a lot of pressure for the pastors, and pastors can easily, excuse me, burn out or flame out if there isn't a good support system. Sometimes there can be conflict that develops in the system if something comes up that you find to be conflicted with the clergy person. And that doesn't have anything to do particularly with the church, but it's that relationship. So that is something that's kind of our background and some of the things that we are. Again, the consultant said it's not good or bad. It's just that seems to be the type of focus that we have. And we, as a session, ask lots of questions about that. I think are feeling very positive about some of the next things that came out. And as we move forward, next week, we're going to talk a bit more about the strengths and challenges that we found in the report, and then going on into goals and aspirations and some of the things that we can be doing now. Again, one of the things that stuck out with me in the report is that the consultant said, it's good for us and we need to start now and not wait until we have a full-time lead pastor. Now's the time for us to take some positive steps forward. One thing I do need to comment about is a question that we had as we were going through the results of the survey is, did COVID and being shut down have an impact on the survey results? And they said this possibly could be. We did this in August. That seems like an awfully long time ago now in terms of the whole COVID response. We did have some specific questions related to the COVID, and we'll probably be getting into that a bit later, but I just wanted to point out that is something that as we talked with the consultant, we did talk about, and to try to discern if that was causing us to have certain answers. And the answer to that was probably not. We would probably be answering some of these things the same way, regardless of that. Keith, if I'm kind of finished with my part, if you would have anything else?
Nothing really to add aside from a little bit more background that this is going to be especially helpful when we do form a pastor nominating committee to take this information to be able to use it to create the ministry information form that eventually will kind of list the characteristics that we are looking for in the next lead pastor. And then the only other thing, and I don't know, well, if there are any questions that folks might have, Ruth, if you would be able to answer any of those now or later on, if folks would like to wait till later on.
Are there any questions at this point?
All right, guys, it's Sam. Got a question. I'm rather fuzzy on. I've heard Ewen called transitional pastor. I thought he came in as lead pastor.
I am a transitional lead pastor. So I'm only here to help you through these next months and phases that you're going to be going through so that you can work on a mission study, the ministry information form that Keith mentioned. You can take this time to assess and to talk about a HolyCow assessment, and then elect a pastor nominating committee and have them find your next installed pastor. I'm not an installed pastor here. Does that answer your question, Sam?
Okay, yeah, it does.
You're
I'm
stuck with me
I'm
for a period
relatively,
of time.
I'm only, well, I've been working with the church for 20 odd years in radio. I've watched Keith about the time Charlie got here that I made the transition from where I was to the church
Okay.
as a permanent. So this, the transitional installed, all this is kind of little fuzzy on the mind.
Well, we Presbyterians try to keep everybody fuzzy in the mind.
Well, again, you do a very good job of it. I mean, between where I was and where I'm at now, it's about two words of doctrine that are different.
Okay. Any other questions? If I might take a point of personal privilege here, I want to congratulate you for using HolyCow. I personally have heard about it and I've read about it, but I've never been a part of a congregation that has used it. And I think it does open up your eyes to things that you maybe have glossed over in the past or just taken for granted, and allows you to really look a little closer at yourself and see who you are, as Ruth has just said, and then ask yourself, is this the direction we wish to continue to go, or how do we strengthen ourselves in our ministry? So I commend you on that. Any final words, Ruth or Keith?
The only other thing I'd like to say is to thank our session and the Presbyterian Northern Kansas, especially Melanie Hancock and Pat Ireland for their help, and for our HolyCow task force, our communication task force. Lots of folks have worked really hard to put all this together, and will continue to be working hard to help us to make sense of it and let it be a voice of God guiding us forward to the future. So thank you all.
Absolutely. Thank you. If there's no